On today's how-to, we're going to discuss basic wiring techniques. What we have here is a truck with a slight wiring problem. This vehicle, as oversized as it is, has an intermittent fault with the electric fans. They come on sometimes they don't. So, we're going to take the first step towards repairing them. Let's take a look at this situation here. These fans are controlled by a couple of relays here, and what a relay does is it allows a small voltage signal to turn on a high voltage signal, which is what or a high current signal, which is what the fans will require. So, as you can see, this is a mess. So the first thing to do with an electrical problem like this is basically clean house. Gut all this stuff, start from scratch. So that is what we're going to do. We are going to just start removing things. Now it's most helpful if you're not too familiar with wiring, etc., to draw yourself a diagram. If you are, then just do what I'm doing here. Just start removing things. What it is, it's new on top of old, and so instead of removing the old stuff, the new stuff was just simply thrown over it, creating a convoluted scene. Let's get this piece out of here. What this is, it is your controller, which is no longer in use. So, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Well, we still got quite a few wires hanging around. Start removing them, because by cleaning up and removing all the old wires and stuff, you'll sort out what's actually being used, what's not, and it'll make rewiring it a lot simpler, because you won't have so much stuff going on. Your brain will be able to absorb it easier. You can see these caught fire at some point, which leads me to believe there's a high current condition, if they're even still in use at this point. Okay with that. One more bit of this mess gone. See, already just a few minutes into this, we are making some headway on cleaning up this scene. This is your old sensor. And what my buddy here is doing is manually controlling these fans at this point, just because of the confusion that has been caused by this mess. So we're going to set him up to be able to turn these relays on, which will turn the fans on from inside the cab. So there are a couple of real basics that are important. One, you must have a good ground, and two, you must have a good positive signal. So we have to make sure that we have those two things. Let's start by checking the ground. Now, whenever you have a problem, an electrical problem, I should say, with a vehicle, quite often just the ground, bad connection, not rocket science. And, quite fortunately, it's the cheapest to fix. So, let's take a look at this ground. What I'm suspecting here, you see all this nice fresh paint? That there's paint between this ground connection and our terminal, or eyelet. So, let's get this off. And take a peek at what we got going. Seeing you at some point in time or another, you may want to run this ground somewhere else. Now look at this. Not a great connection to begin with, not a good fit, as you can see. Welcome. Here's our next step. We need to establish a better ground. The top here will probably be the spot for us. But what I'm doing here is basically scraping away some of the paint, or filing away some of the paint, to get a nice solid connection. And this may miss. That is going to provide the type of grounding surface we want. Now, we also determined that eyelet was a little bit on the unsatisfactory. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to use a washer to create a better connection. What is its size for the bolt makes the bolt's effective head bigger. I'm going to use this to increase the surface area and ensure that I'm getting the desired connection. Pretty easy. Lock washer might be a little bit overdoing it. We'll remove that, just use the flat washer. And let's see what we got going on. Now I'm just putting the bolt back, or the nut back on the bolt. Assembly is the reversal of disassembly. We want to make sure we get it back tight. Very easy. As you notice, I'm intentionally using very basic tools, so anybody can do this at home. No special tools required. Like I said, if you have any problems, draw yourself a diagram before you jump right into it. Alright, so we're certain we have a good ground now. Alright, let's see what we got going on here. So now, we know we have both our hot and our ground connected appropriately. You see this type of a connection here? Not that great. Let's take a look inside and see what's been happening with it. If you get stuck, it works. If you have alternatives, use them. Looking at this connection, it is reasonable to say that it got hot. I can tell by the color change in the copper here and the damaged strands. So we're going to redo this connection because the reason it got hot was the resistance became high because it's a poor connection. If resistance goes up, the current becomes more intense, current being amperage, and next thing you know, you have a fire. Strippers, another very, very handy tool to have. Stick it in the hole and pull. You now have nice, clean, exposed wires. Same thing here. What we're doing is we're reestablishing our negative supply to our fan motors. And these I'm going to strip back just a hair more than the other ones, and I'll show you why in a minute. Basically because there's two fans and I need to twist them together, and the act of twisting them is going to make them shorter. This one as well. Our next fancy dancy tool, crimpers. Here are what crimpers do. They crimp this type of a connector here. This is called a butt connector, or it's a crimp connector, and the type of crimp connector is a butt connector. And it locks wires together. So, you pick a side and you just stick that fancy thing right there in your tool. You take your wire, you stick it in the metal collar inside. You see the metal collar? You put it right on in there. Don't let the strands fold out of the way, so that's why I twisted them. In they go. All the way. Squeeze. This wire is now locked in there. We are going to do the same thing on this side. Make sure these are nice and tight. In you go. And that's a little bit on the long side still, so we're going to shorten it. In you go. Make sure you feel comfortable that it's all the way. Put your crimper on the other side of the connector there, just like that. And squeeze. Now we have a secure connection there. We're starting to make a little bit of headway. So let's take the fan supply here and the fan supply here, and let's get them together. What we're going to do, now that we're reasonably convinced that we have everything wired up the way we want it, At least we think it is. Before we clean up this mess, we should check it. So being that it's operated by a remote switch, we'll just hop into the cab and try it. And both fans are on as they should be. Now, it's just a matter of cleaning it up. We're just going to use some tape here. Kind of just put everything to a nice, neat little situation. Even got blue. Can't get any better than that. Basically, you just don't want these dangling all over God's green earth and bumping into things and all that. So, a little band of tape. We'll throw these right on in there. And later on, I'll strap them down to the chassis. Basic wiring techniques. We've learned how to use crimpers. We've learned how to connect relays. We've learned about different wire sizes and maintaining a proper ground. So that is the end.